How's it going, everyone? I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube video, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the other content on the channel. Follow us on social media. The links are in the description and the names on the screen. Also, listen on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform we're available there. Welcome to this episode weekend preview. We're returning after the international break, at least the matches are over, but the repercussions of such break are not over. We're going to get to them in details. Always join us for more and help us always reach more audience. Thank you. You're welcome. We're kicking things off from this weekend preview. Of course, we're going to Germany. I chose particularly to go to Germany because I really wanted to start with a match that I really want to talk about the most, which is Leipzig hosting Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. But before that, let's rattle quickly the schedule of the Bundesliga this weekend. On Saturday, things kick off with Hoffenheim versus Mainz, Union Berlin, Augsburg, Bayern Leverkusen hosting Borussia Dortmund, Freiburg versus Köln, Greuther Fürth hosting Wolfsburg, and Leipzig, of course, hosting Bayern. All these matches on Saturday, and on Sunday it is Eintracht Frankfurt hosting Stuttgart, Bochum versus Hertha Berlin, and Borussia Mönchengladbach hosting Arminia Bielefeld. Now, clearly, as I mentioned, there's a host of big matches here. Bayern Leverkusen second versus fifth place Dortmund at the moment. I mean, Leverkusen gaining a little bit of momentum here at the start of the season. There's Wolfsburg, of course, facing Greuther Fürth away from home. It looks like an easy 3 points for them. Greuther Fürth are pretty, shockingly low, I would say, on the table. 16, of course, in the playoff spots, but definitely the big game. And the tie of the week goes to RB Leipzig hosting Bayern Munich, and it is a poetic sort of game for a lot of people in the Bayern camp. Definitely for Julian Nagelsmann, who moved there in July, for Marcel Sabitzer, who was secured as a late deal back in late August and early September. Joe Upamecano, who guaranteed and secured his move halfway through last season. All of these factors. But the biggest factor, I think, of them all is that both of those teams have Champions League games to look forward in the midweek. Obviously, Leipzig. Leipzig's game is not as hard as Bayern Munich. I mean, being drawn in the group with City and PSG definitely is a hard, but it's not the hardest of starts for Leipzig in the Champions League, as Bayern Munich will start by travelling away to Barcelona, which is a game as hard of as recent of a precedent as it might sound. This is not easy for Bayern Munich. It's not easy. It's not going to be the same Barcelona. Maybe it will be a better Barcelona. Who knows? And Bayern Munich may not be sure of some players being available for that game. Lucas Hernandez is still training individually with the teams, and Julian Nagelsmann confirmed that he's going to be present in one of the games, not two of them. So either he's going to start against Leipzig or going to start against Barcelona, and I certainly think this is going to start against Barcelona better, give him more time for training. Thomas Müller is training with the team as well. Aside from that, I think most of the team is fine. Sané, Gnabry, Lewandowski, Kimmich, Goretzka, I think all returned fine from the international break. Davis as well was international break with Canada. He returned just fine. I think it's been fine. Only Benjamin Pavard of the whole bunch hasn't exactly been in a sort of strong circle of the international break, so there's no problems with him. Overall, a fine squad to choose from Bayern Munich. For Leipzig as well, there's no issues really. So the game is going to go the way it's going to go. Personally, I would say Bayern Munich could afford a loss in this game or dropping points, for two main reasons. First of all, I prefer Bayern Munich to stay focused on the game against Barcelona in the Champions League. Yes, I know this is a game against Leipzig, potential challenges for the league. Who knows if they're going to challenge or not for the league. Their start of the season has been pretty underwhelming. Only 3 points in the first 3 games, and it took a while for them to start strong in this season, and it probably take more to start strong this season, considering the raid that have been subjected to over the transfer window. But then you have Bayern Munich also starting against Barcelona in the Champions League, which is a harder game again by all metrics. And I would assume that game would make Bayern less focused here against Leipzig, which we're going to give Bayern I was going to give Leipzig, the potential to upset them and to get the 3 points of them, particularly hosting at their own stadium. So it's definitely a situation where, I'm not going to say a win-win situation, but I think it's a mitigation of damages kind of thing, where Bayern could afford a slip, could afford a loss, could have dropped some points, 1 or 3 of them, and it won't exactly hurt because we're not at a crucial point of the season. We're just 4 games in. It's hard to judge Bayern. It's hard to really judge the way they've been going under Nagelsmann, although there have been good signs. The game in the Cup, of course, against Bremer, the dozen goals scored, and then the win, in the against Hertha Berlin 5-0. It's kind of a good mood to set you in heading into the international break. Lewandowski scoring a couple of goals in the international break. Improving his tally for the season. 11 goals already for him in the season, and already on 5 goals in the Bundesliga. It looks like it's going to be a very, very big battle between him and Haaland this season. Again, it's just, in my opinion, a game where Bayern could afford a slip, but definitely the most important thing is the fact that they're going to give a good performance. We're going to see some improvements. I want to see those improvements because the Champions League is a serious business, and despite the group relatively being easy and sort of passable, with the exception of Barcelona, but definitely you need to improve performance as best as you can, because when you're going to face the bigger teams, or at least the more favourable teams this season in the Champions League, the likes of PSG and Man City and Chelsea, the winners, you have to, to perform really, really strong to send a statement for those teams watching. Elsewhere in the Bundesliga, Borussia Mönchengladbach, who have been really bad, really awful in the start of the season, under the new manager in Adi Hütter. I don't think it's working particularly well for them. The season, the start has been terrible. 7 goals, being one of the worst defenses of the Bundesliga this season. It kind of really tells that they're continuing on the same downward spiral that started with in the start of the season. Their only point, by the way, came against Bayern of all teams, and we're facing them later in this month in the Cup, in the second round. So it's all caps terrible for Borussia Mönchengladbach at the start of the season, but definitely they will come up against Bayern and they will become monsters once again, and Jan Sommer is going to become prime Manuel Neuer anyway. As I mentioned, Borussia Dortmund is going to face Bayer Leverkusen away from home. That's a game to watch as well. Borussia Dortmund also haven't exactly started on the strongest of foot. They got a couple of wins, but the loss against Freiburg was pretty underwhelming. Their defensive frailties are still on show, something which Marco Rose should deal with if he wants to be serious contender for anything this season, at least locally. We're not going to get to the European level yet. Freiburg starting strong. They face Köln in a game that sounds easy on paper. Köln started well this season as well. So definitely, still in the first turn of the season, or the first sort of hurdle of the season. We don't know how the teams are going to perform yet. We're still trying to feel out things in the Bundesliga and how things are going to shape up to the rest of the season. But definitely, all eyes are going to be on Leipzig versus Bayern Munich, 2 Champions League contenders, preparing themselves for the battle, of course, and Borussia Dortmund as well, trying to set themselves in the mood for the Champions League nights starting next week. Moving on and to the Premier League, it is a packed week in the Premier League, a packed Saturday at the very least. In the Premier League, it kicks off on Saturday with Crystal Palace hosting Tottenham in London Derby. Arsenal battling Norwich City in a game that most people label as a sort of a relegation battle almost for Arsenal. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but definitely the bad and the horrific start of the season for Arsenal is, sort of a justification for why people can call it that way. Brentford, after a very solid start of the season in the first couple of weeks, they face Brighton Hove Albion, also starting really well at the start of the season. Leicester City face Man City in probably the biggest clash of the week. Manchester United host Newcastle United in a game where Cristiano Ronaldo is expected to return, at least not a starter according to all reports, and definitely is going to be, appearing at a certain point of that game, definitely second half for sure. Southampton host West Ham United on Saturday as well. Wolverhampton travel away to face Watford, and Chelsea host Aston Villa in a pretty tricky game for the Champions League winners. And on Sunday, Leeds United face Liverpool, who potentially could go without all of their Brazilian contingent who travelled with the Brazilian national team, and also Alisson and Fabinho already being injured, and Firmino being part of the whole fiasco with the international break in South America and all that, could be suspended for this game because of the restrictions rule and COVID sort of that quarantine and maybe a ban for 5 days. Who knows? The situation is pretty weird at the moment. And on the other side of Merseyside, Everton are going to be hosting Burnley. That game is going to be on is going to take place on Sunday at 8 p.m. Again, overall, the biggest game of the week should be Leicester City versus Man City, two teams that started differently, I would say. Leicester started just a tad bit less convincing than Man City. Man City took, I think, the early jab against Tottenham, and they lost 1-0 in that first game. Obviously, didn't lose because they were worse, but they lost because they made a couple of mistakes which eventually were costly. Leicester City, on the other hand, they started also in a pretty unconvincing way. A rough win against Wolverhampton, a rough win against Norwich, and the loss in between against West Ham, pretty embarrassing one against West Ham 4-1. Man City were more convincing in the next couple of games. They beat Norwich by 5, they beat Arsenal by 5, put them in the mud. So you have to ask yourself how strong they could get and how strong they could still be, even without a striker after all the failed signings for them this transfer window. Man City, of course, favourites to win the Champions League, finalists of last season. They want to improve even more, they want to look even stronger, and that is sort of an ambition for Guardiola. How they're going to do it without a striker for the second season, or maybe the third season in a row, who knows, but obviously they have the important talent, they have the incredible squad and the depth to really justify their ambition for almost every single title they can play for. On the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the Manchester City, there's Man United waiting for their home son, Cristiano Ronaldo, to return in the game against Newcastle United, a game that looks appetising from all things considered. Newcastle started with 1 point out of the first 3 games, not the best record. To start with, and then, of course, facing Man United away from home. Man United, who sort of picked up themselves really well before the break after, defeating Wolverhampton. The draw before that against Southampton was quite weird in the way it happened, but definitely picked themselves up against Wolverhampton. They showed a better fortune. Not exactly more efficiency, but at least they got the 3 points against Wolves with the start of Varane in his first game in United. You expect him to start again this time. Maybe he will be benched, who knows? He's been in international break with France. We don't expect him to be fully involved with Manchester United, at least into a couple of weeks later. Sancho probably is going to be on the bench as well. And of course, as I mentioned, Cristiano Ronaldo returning should be on the bench, should appear at least in the second half. That's an appearance everybody's waiting in Man United. Everybody watches the Premier League is waiting, and certainly some fantasy player are getting their points checked and getting their sort of free hits and wild cards being used to try and bring Cristiano Ronaldo into their teams. Certainly looks like an appetising tie to play fantasy football, which is why I'm going to fix my account after recording this anyway. The champions and the winners of the Champions League, Chelsea, of course, face Aston Villa in a tricky game. They started pretty well in the first couple of games. The draw against Liverpool, through no fault of theirs, I think was a pretty good result, again, because of the circumstances, the red card, and all of that, the whole penalty debate that happened during that game. But definitely a game against Aston Villa, who have been up and down. It's been a pretty unbalanced start for them. The 3 games that they have, no game is similar to the other in terms of the performance. And you don't know what kind of Aston Villa you're going to get. Are you going to get the best version of Aston Villa with, Emiliano Buendia proving that he still can hang around, John McGinn supporting from the middle, working hard as they should? Or you're going to get the bad version of Aston Villa that just doesn't know how to defend, just is not organised. Something you cannot say about Aston Villa a lot, but definitely sometimes happen to them, which you cannot ever say about Chelsea because they're always organised. And they have a pretty stable structure under Thomas Tuchel, and also they're looking to strengthen their chances in defending that Champions League, which is really hard task. I mean, just ask Bayern Munich how it went for them last season, but definitely Chelsea want to start the Champions League season on a good note, and they want to win against Aston Villa as well to keep themselves going, to keep the momentum going in the Premier League, and try and put themselves into the biggest conversation of who is going to be winning the Premier League this season, alongside United, alongside Liverpool, alongside Man City, and potentially Spurs, who face Crystal Palace away from home. That's been a nuisance for them last season away from home. They drawn 1-1 there last season. It was Kane's goal that saved them, that gave them the lead, and then of course they conceded late to drop 2 points there. They may drop 2 points again. Crystal Palace started horrifically this season and do not look as a good team at all. In the start of this season, you have Arsenal facing Norwich City on the side of North. Terrific start to the season. Then you have, of course, West Ham United facing Southampton away. It was a decent start for them this season as well. They missed the opportunity last time out to make it 3 out of 3 and have the perfect start alongside Tottenham after they dropped points to Tottenham's opponent, Crystal Palace. Of course, West Ham could be really a good side this season again as well for securing the Europa League spot last time out under David Moyes, who really found his groove with West Ham United after failed sort of stint at Everton and at Manchester United more precisely. So definitely they'll be looking to improve upon their performances last season and the performances in the first couple of games, and obviously with European ties in mind, it definitely looked like West Ham United could use some depth in this squad and could use some relaxation in these kind of games, of course, but they definitely need to win if they want to keep any momentum going this season. I mentioned in the intro that the international break still has some repercussions to be felt all around Europe, and La Liga is one of those leagues that is going to feel the repercussions of the international breaks hitting them, as 2 games are going to get cancelled for the weekend: Sevilla versus Barcelona and Deportivo Alaves versus Villarreal in Villarreal Stadium. Of course, La Ceramica. Both games were scheduled to take place on Saturday, but they're not taking place because of some players not being available. I mean, Barcelona mostly have European players on the international break, the Dutch and some of the other players, but definitely Sevilla are hurt most by that because they have a couple of Brazilians and a couple of course Argentinians as well on international break. The game is going to be postponed due to other date, as well as Villarreal versus Deportivo Alaves. Elsewhere, Levante starts off on Saturday against Rayo Vallecano. Then you have Athletic Bilbao facing Mallorca. Then you have on Sunday, Espanyol facing Atletico Madrid in the afternoon. Osasuna facing Valencia, Cadiz, Real Sociedad, Real Madrid in a very tricky game against Celta Vigo out of the very tricky game that they had against Levante. Getafe versus Elche, Granada versus Real Betis. All of these games, or actually Real Betis and Granada is on Monday. Getafe Elche is the last game on Sunday in La Liga. So overall, the focus, as usual, is on the big 3. One of them is on hold. As I mentioned, Barcelona's game got cancelled against Sevilla, the biggest game arguably of the week, got cancelled. Real Madrid, of course, and Atletico Madrid might take this one as an opportunity to sort of start making a gap, if that's possible. You can't really talk about gaps in the table and in the standings now. We're only 4 weeks in, but definitely it's a momentum booster for Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid to get some advantage over Barcelona before they play the game against Sevilla, definitely down the line. Barcelona, of course, this might be an advantage for Barcelona before the game against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, which can give them some rest, really, to not have the excuse of being physically exhausted, albeit again, most of the Champions League sides play on Saturday, mostly, to give them some advantage if they play on Tuesday. For Real Madrid, the start of the season has been good. They're top of the table with 7 points, but not exactly convincing. I mean, a good start, that's the only thing you could say. I mean, actually, about the 3 teams in the league that competed for the title last season, you could say that their start of the season wasn't exactly convincing for all of them. Real Madrid, they struggled to win against Alaves. They struggled to win against Levante, or they drawn against Levante, and they struggled to win in the last time out against Real Betis, which was definitely the kind of performance that doesn't give Real Madrid fans any kind of hope, particularly in the Champions League. and with the squad that they have, which is not bad with the addition of Camavinga, it really might improve, but definitely a squad that is getting AG, in particular in the midfield with Modric and Kroos. Casemiro might not do his role as good as he used to do it. He probably died in 2017, actually, and the current version of Casemiro is controlled by aliens. Who knows? Casemiro felt like he hasn't been the same since 2017 or 2018. Not exactly a convincing defense as well with Alaba and Militao. I mean, it's a big problem. Yes, they didn't concede against Betis, but they conceded against Alaves. There were some really strong chances for Betis to score against them. I mean, if it wasn't for Courtois in the game against Betis in particular, it would have been a really bad night for Real Madrid. They literally scored on a counter-attack from a chance that Betis missed in the game against the Sevilla side. So it's not exactly peaches and creams for Real Madrid. Neither it is for Atletico Madrid, who had to call up Lady Luck to get a draw against Villarreal at their own stadium last time out. To all, a ridiculous own goal gave them the point, and I don't know why they were happy about it, as if it was their own making. I mean, it was a loose ball, kinda, from Koke, just a desperate ball looking for anyone up front. Issa Mendy, it's an easy back pass with the head. The goalkeeper, Geronimo Rulli, was just in the wrong place, and they conceded a goal, and that's it. It's definitely not the best kind of start for Atletico Madrid, performance-wise. The results, I mean, you can see that they have 7 points. At least they're not defeated yet. Their defense is still pretty solid, albeit they're not showing any signs that it could still defend the title again. Again, it's too early to judge, but with the addition or the return of Griezmann to the club, which is a whole mess on its own, you mentioned it in the transfer market recap episode, definitely is going to try and help them. We're going to see how Griezmann and Suarez will work together now in Atletico Madrid after they didn't exactly click at Barcelona. So we see how that works. We'll see how Atletico is going to build their lineup now with the additions that they have, how Simeone is going to build his lineup now. Is it going to still play with a 3-5-2, sort of the hybrid 3-5-2 or the 5-3-2 he played with last season, or is it going to revert to the 4-4-2, his classic, or is it going to be lenient tactically? What is it going to try and do this season? We'll try and see. The game against Espanyol sounds like an easy way for them to get some 3 points away from home after the return of the break. Definitely a tough group they have in the Champions League against Milan, Porto, and Liverpool. So it's definitely an incredible game. They have actually to start against Liverpool at Anfield, which is all the nostalgia, all the PTSD, I think, for the Liverpool fans. Not just because of the game itself, in football-wise, but also because it was one of the super spreaders of COVID-19 in Europe, alongside the game of Valencia versus Atalanta. And it was one of the reasons why COVID really surged big in Europe, those Champions League games that took place with crowds in the stadiums. Finishing off with Barcelona, as I mentioned, as I mentioned, it's an advantage for them to not play this weekend against Sevilla. Maybe they get their players back. They have a couple more training sessions. Maybe they try and work some kinks out before the game against Bayern. Obviously, things that they need to address before facing Bayern, which is again a big game, a revenge-based game for Barcelona. Who knows? Just a bit that I wanted to talk about. Real Madrid are going to get their stadium back. This is going to be the first game that they play at the Bernabeu this season. First home game. They played 3 away games this season until the stadium is ready. And definitely now they have the stadium back. They're going to be playing Celta Vigo. It's going to be a game seen in the stadium in flesh by 22,500 fans, which is going to be a really good thing for Real Madrid to finally get back in that proper stadium and, stop spending on the renovation of the stadium and try to get back into the proper business of the season, maybe focus on doing some deals down the line anyway. So it's interesting to see how Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid are going to pursue their season while Barcelona are not going to be playing this weekend. To round up the episode, we go to the Serie A, and it is a pretty interesting week in Serie A as well. Round 3 of action kicks off on Saturday. Empoli facing Venezia, Napoli facing Juventus, the biggest game of the week, I would say. Atalanta, Fiorentina, Sampdoria, Inter on Sunday to kick things off. Cagliari versus Genoa in the derby, Spezia versus Udinese, Torino versus Salernitana, Milan versus Lazio, that's a pretty tasty game as well, Roma under Jose Mourinho with a bright start face Sassuolo, and Bologna face Hellas Verona, that is a game on Monday. Definitely the focus is on Juve, and I think for all the wrong reasons. Juventus at the moment are 12th in the table, and they have 1 point out of 2 games. Obviously, they're nowhere near going to be relegated this season because that is a pity talk. That's only troll talk, by the way. But their start has posed so many questions. The return of Allegri, the way he's been managing the club, the exit of Cristiano, the fallout from that, and how, I mean, already with Cristiano in the team, there were just so many problems under Pirlo last season. Imagine now the problems without Cristiano, a man who used to provide solutions for a while for Juventus at least. I mean, let's be fair, he was the top scorer last season, he was a solution maker for Juventus, he was a big part of why Juventus made it to the Champions League this season. We would have found Juventus in the Europa League had Cristiano Ronaldo not been the top scorer, and is by a big margin was the best player for Juventus last season. So the start under Allegri was not good. The draw against Udinese was weird in its own circumstances, and definitely the loss against Empoli was even worse because Empoli played their way into winning. They didn't luck their way into winning. They played their game into winning. They had a terrific first half. They scored. At certain portions of the game, they felt like dominated Juventus. They actually played better. They outdone them in their own stadium against their own fans, in front of their own fans. I mean, they cannot have an excuse for that loss against Empoli, and maybe they would have the excuse of travelling away to Napoli, who also started strong this season. They had 2 incredible victories. They look super good under Maurizio Sarri. Obviously, it's going to be a poetic game for Sarri as well, who's been sort of trash-talked so much during his tenure at Juventus, despite winning the Serie A for them, keeping it in Turin, but definitely he's been, chastised for his style of football being ineffective, being not suitable for Juventus at a certain point, and for, not dealing with the players the way that he should, putting Dybala out of favour. Dybala continued to be out of favour under Pirlo last season. He returned now to the sort of first team sheet with Allegri in the first couple of games. He's been the captain of the team, and he's been given more freedom. So it's all about Juventus in this one, how they're going to respond to their first couple of games that they had. If they lose here, I'm not going to say that they're going to have a rough season, but it's definitely going to be a similar story to last season where they struggled, or at least they struggled midway through maybe, or sort of they got a little bit, it got them a little time to start struggling in the season, but they're going to start struggling from this point onwards now, and the struggle started early for them this season, since the first couple of games. Again, losing at home against Empoli the way they did, and drawing against Udinese, losing a lead against Udinese the way they did is horrendous. And against a team that in Napoli that looks so much informed, by the way, it's just going to be so much trouble for them. Elsewhere in the league, Milan also starting really strong this season, continuing under the tutelage of Pioli. Giroud finding himself. They're really putting on all cylinders. The victory against Cagliari was just amazing, 4-1. A very, very impressive victory. Roma under Jose Mourinho as well, facing Sassuolo. It's definitely going to be a really, really good game against Sassuolo. I didn't give Lazio their credit, by the way. They're top of the table under Maurizio Sarri. Under Maurizio Sarri, Lazio, of course. Napoli under Luciano Spalletti. I really confused both of them. I thought, anyway, my mistake, anyway. So I really regress on what I said about the poetic game between Napoli and Juventus. I say that about Lazio and Maurizio Sarri, who again are doing pretty good at the moment. 2 impressive wins. Milan starting pretty strong as well. Roma under Mourinho, really impressive in the first couple of games, beating Salernitana, albeit a bit of a struggle in the first half against that side, Salernitana. I wish they don't drop to the second division because of the Tunisian players, of course, as I mentioned. Wojciech Strieder, who I support, and I want to watch blossom and be successful, but he's getting hard games after hard games. Maybe the game against Torino is going to be a fine opportunity for them to get a point, maybe get 3. Who knows anyway, but obviously focus is on Juventus and Serie A this season, and maybe they're going to try and pull themselves out of the hole they dug at the start of the season. Inter, of course, facing Sampdoria away after the start of the season as well. Pretty impressive in the first couple of games. Lukaku who, says the Inter fans as well, after Dzeko started to find his form in the first couple of games. Lautaro Martinez doing it well. The new signee Angel Correa started strong with a couple of victories against Hellas Verona last time out, so it's definitely it's pretty an exciting time in the Serie A, despite the lack of enthusiasm about it generally from the broadcasting TV networks and all of that. But it's going to be an interesting season for all the right reasons, to see whether Juventus are going to make it, to see who's going to be winning the Serie A, if there will be a real competition for more than just two teams this season for Serie A. Lastly, of course, thanks for watching. Follow us on social media, as I mentioned, the links in the description and the names on the screen. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform, and definitely like, share, comment on this YouTube version, and subscribe to the channel. Help us always reach more audience. Thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.